In a significant foreign policy move, Modi 3.0 has issued a stern warning to an expansionist China. New Delhi has cautioned China to respect international laws, else Beijing may find itself isolated with all neighbors uniting against an expansionist CCP. With this statement, is India reminding China of the 2016 ruling by an international tribunal at The Hague, which rejected the imaginary Chinese 9-dash line and artificial Chinese islands? Following the ruling, Xi Jinping probably said international law, never heard of it, and CCP went on to add another line to poke their neighbors even more. However, Indian Foreign Ministry has outrightly backed Manila in this face-off against China. Issuing a statement, New Delhi opposed what it called destabilizing actions in the South China Sea that seek to change the status quo by force or coercion. Ranveer Jaiswal, External Affairs Ministry spokesperson, said, and I quote, "We have always emphasized on adherence to international law, respect for the rules-based order, and resolution of disputes in a peaceful manner." Unquote. China always seeks to salami slice and then attempts to intimidate smaller neighbors into accepting the new ground reality. Now, this is what the PLA attempted at the LAC border against India, but in 2020, this resulted in the first Chinese deaths in combat in decades. It seems China learnt its lesson against India, so now it is attempting the same tactic against a smaller Philippines. India has again advised the CCP leadership to seek a peaceful resolution as China and Philippines edge closer to war, after Chinese Coast Guard, armed with knives, axes and swords, rammed Philippines naval vessels, confiscated their weapons and even detained personnel. The Philippine boats were attacked by Chinese Coast Guard near the resource-rich Second Thomas Shoal, which comes under the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. However, despite repeated warnings from India and other democratic countries like the United States and Japan, China fails to mend its ways nor respect international laws, especially the UN Convention on the Laws of the Sea or UNCLOS. Instead, China is trying to bully Manila into submission. PLA Navy has deployed its second aircraft carrier, Shandong, which was seen patrolling off the coast of Philippines. But since Manila now has the Indian BrahMos missiles, this could come back to haunt the PLA. CCP's mouthpiece, the Global Times, reported on the 1st of July that the recent deployment of Shandong serves as a deterrence against, quote, continuous Philippine provocations on, quote, Chinese islands and reefs in the South China Sea. The world is on the edge of a major armed conflict. The US has vowed to protect the Philippines by force if needed. This is not just a bilateral maritime dispute anymore. Chinese bizarre claims in the region have been rejected by an international tribunal. So what was the Hague ruling, and how did China react to it? In 2016, an international tribunal ruled in favor of the Philippines and invalidated Chinese claims in the strategic waters. It basically said there is no Chinese 9-dash line, nor are Chinese artificial islands in the South China Sea lawful, nor can China claim any maritime rights by building such artificial islands. As expected, the CCP used its propaganda machine to simply reject and ignore the ruling, and till today it not only maintains those imaginary claims, but it has militarized those islands and now is using weapons and threats against the Philippine Navy. But that's not all. Since the 9-dash line was rejected, China has now made it into an imaginary 10-dash line, which also claims a few Japanese islands. Last year, ahead of the G20 summit in India, China released a new official map and added a 10th dash to the 9-dash line, angering all of its neighbors. India rejected any Chinese claims to Arunachal or Aksai Chin, while ASEAN nations united with India to rubbish Chinese claims in the West Philippine Sea. Beijing rejects exclusive economic zones and thus maritime rights of the Philippines, Taiwan, Vietnam, Brunei, Indonesia and even Malaysia, while the White House has reiterated support for ironclad US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty, which extends to any attacks on Philippines armed forces. The United States will also be conducting a joint military exercise with the Philippines as a show of support. So how is India boosting its strategic alliances with the ASEAN nations and boosting its military footprint in the Indo-Pacific? The Philippines has emerged as a key strategic and defense partner for India after the Indian Air Force delivered the batteries of the BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles and launchers to the Philippines Marine Corps in a $375 million deal in April 2024. Considered the most lethal supersonic cruise missile in the world, Manila bought the Indian BrahMos for its coastal defense against any Chinese attack. Satellite imagery showed the South Asian nation's first BrahMos anti-ship missile base taking shape in Zambales province of the west coast of Luzon Island. According to internal simulations conducted by the Indian military, a salvo of just 3 BrahMos missiles can sink even the biggest Chinese aircraft carrier. Indonesia, Thailand and Vietnam have also shown keen interest in the Indian BrahMos missile. But that's not all. New Delhi realizes that a potential war in the Indo-Pacific will affect India as well. Thus, India is boosting military infrastructure in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands to prevent any Chinese naval surge in the Indian Ocean in case of a war. Andaman and Nicobar Islands are known to be the world's most strategic located island chains, as it overlooks the important choke point and the entry to the Malacca Strait, the world's busiest shipping lane. India is thus building new missile bases, runways and military facilities in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. India also wants to convert the Andaman and Nicobar into a shipping hub and a tourist destination under a $9 billion project. The big question remains, why is China threatening war and rejecting all international laws and rulings? And will India be pulled in case China sparks a conflict in the Indo-Pacific? Leave a comment, hit the like button and subscribe to Inconnect News for daily updates on current affairs and geopolitics.